And we're live. Today we don't have Anton here to surprise me by throwing the live button before I'm ready. We have Adam Helweh. Is that how you say it? Helweh? Helweh?
Yes, Helweh, Helweh. Both of them work. Yep.
Yep, I thought your name was unique, and it absolutely isn't. I was searching for your name, and there are boatloads of you around the world. I'm going to introduce you, though. A quick hello, and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Adam Helweh.
It sounds like somebody's got some experience singing, huh?
Yeah, well, actually, hearing your voice, I thought I've really got to get down there and get the deep voice going, because you've got a deeper voice than I have.
But you know how to use it better with those cool singing tones. You don't want me to try that at all. But it's good to be here. We talked a few months back, and I had a lot of fun talking with you. So I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, I find it actually very difficult to believe that you can't sing. But I'll take your word for it. I'm pretty sure anybody with a voice that deep can sing. The other thing is actually, interesting enough, somebody once told me I'm a double bass player. And they tell me with really deep notes, the really low notes, the human brain, the human ear and the human brain corrects. So you can actually sing and play completely out of tune as long as it's low, and the human brain will correct. But if it's high, it can't correct. So you probably have a singing career, you just don't know it, because you can sing out of tune and nobody will notice.
You know, I was in choir a lot as a kid, and I certainly, I guess, had a louder voice. They said, and that maybe is attributed to just being loud. But the funny thing is I know folks have commented on my voice being low, and I was a mobile DJ and did some other stuff for a while. So people were like, "You should, DJ," and I was like, I did a little bit of that on the side and all this, but in my head, I don't sound as low as what I think people hear. It's that voice inside where when you hear it resonating inside your own noggin, it doesn't sound as deep. So I'm always thankful that other people enjoy the tone, I guess.
Oh, I love the tone. I'm basically speechless. But that isn't the point of today. I'm going to start off with Brand SERPs, which is my favorite thing. I immediately looked up your name. You absolutely dominate. I mean, I thought this isn't a unique name, therefore it's easy, and it's not. There are lots of people with exactly the same name, and yet you're the only person on that page. Quickly moving on, you've got your Twitter boxes, and 3 days ago. Now, what's interesting there is the Twitter boxes still appear on your Brand SERP, despite the fact that you haven't actually done anything for 3 days, except retweet and comment. So I asked you about half an hour ago, could you possibly tweet something, an original tweet, and bingo, Bob's your uncle. There you go, on the left.
Wow.
Within 3 minutes. It's literally 17 seconds. If I'd known exactly when you did it, I could have got that 17 seconds at the bottom. And what I love about Twitter boxes is that it gives you as a brand or a person real-time control over what appears in front of your audience when they're Googling your brand name. And 3 minutes, I mean, we go from this. I mean, 3 days, you're very lazy, excuse me. But you hadn't done anything for 3 days. And it's rare that Google keeps those Twitter boxes up for more than 3 days. So you did a good job. Now they're going to stay up for another 3 days because you just tweeted some rubbish about this show. Now, last thing before we move on to your super topic, the human journey engaging the connected customer, which sounds terribly intellectual. I had a look in the knowledge graph, and this just made me laugh. I love it. Basically, looking in the knowledge graph API, we find your name because you're attached to Kalicube Tuesdays. Kalicube Tuesdays is the event that the knowledge graph now recognizes and recommends. But we're both now linked. Thanks to you, I'm now linked indirectly to Mark Twain, who's one of my favorite authors. For some reason, The Human Journey is linked to Life on the Mississippi by Mark Twain. Heaven knows how Google makes that link, but your favorite topic for today is linked to Mark Twain. You're in the knowledge graph thanks to Kalicube Tuesdays.
Wow.
You and Mark Twain are brothers in the knowledge graph. How does that feel?
I'm kind of blown away. I know we've talked about this, and I know you're the man with this, but just to get schooled there in a couple minutes and see all that proof on screen is pretty amazing. And my question is, so it sounds like, is there some level of difficulty to show up, have your Twitter box show up, period? Is there a certain level of authority, a criteria to have that, let alone have it show up only a few minutes afterwards?
Well, I mean, the Twitter box is basically, I mean, if you think about kind of what Google's showing on your brand search, when somebody searches your name or your brand name, it wants to show what's relevant and valuable. If your Twitter account is dead in the water, you're not doing anything, you're not tweeting anything, it won't show it because it isn't going to be valuable and helpful and valuable to your audience. But you obviously have been tweeting regularly over a long period of time. So anybody searching for you is likely to be interested in what you have to say on Twitter. It's as simple as that. Everything in brand search is incredibly simple. So the fact that you have been tweeting regularly over a long period of time and you have engagement from your audience, Google recognizes that because Twitter has a fire hose into Google. Google finds it very easy to digest because it has all of that information in a very structured manner. Yeah, you're just a good Twitter person. Jono Alderson from Yoast is a genius example. He has 5 or 6 times more followers than either you or I, but he doesn't get the Twitter boxes. He doesn't get the Twitter boxes because he only ever retweets. Google's looking for original content. And that's why I asked you to make a tweet, because you had only been retweeting for the last 3 days. I got you to do that tweet. It appears immediately, but the retweets did not appear.
They want all the original content.
Yeah, so your audience is interested in what you have to say, not what you are sharing with your Twitter audience, which is, let's say, 1 step away from the audience that's actually searching for you on Google. Which
it's just a duplicate of. It's just a duplicate of content's already there. So why continue to index that sort of stuff?
I think it's also to do with the fact that your audience on Google isn't the same as your audience on Twitter. And so you're sharing with your audience on Twitter, who are obviously very interested, but the audience on Google is not that same audience. Therefore, Google's looking for something original from you. But that was Brand SERPs, and I could talk about this all day, as I did on your show, and you very kindly allowed me to do so. Today, it's your turn to talk about the human journey, engaging the connected customer. And I mean, my first question is actually the question you sent me, so I'm going to cheat and not even think about my question. What does it mean to be a connected customer?
Sure. So a connected customer is really a couple things. Customers these days, and this has been a trend for for many years now. I can't say exactly when it happened, what year, but it's been probably well over a decade. Connected customers are more connected to each other, and they're more connected to brands and information due to their due to the changing behavior and expectations that have happened by being driven by technology-driven customers, technology-dependent, the pervasiveness of the internet and all the information that's available. And so really a connected customer is someone who is technology-enabled in pretty much what they do on a day-to-day basis, where they get their information from, how they're connected to their community, their peers, their family and friends. But then additionally, now that starts to roll over, and it has rolled over some years ago and continues to be the expectation of connected customers. It rolls over to how they communicate also with institutions and brands at the same time.
Sorry, it goes to the foundation of absolutely everything we're doing. I mean, looking at your beard, not wishing to insult you, but you're probably one of these people who was around before we were all connected customers.
Correct. Yeah. So we've got, they call them digital natives a lot of times, right? Where we have folks that were born always being connected in some form or fashion. I graduated high school in 1994, and I always think about the fact that I graduated in 94, and right around 94 was when we started using AOL at the time, right? So it was dial-up. We were using AOL, and that right around that time was where the internet started to become a little bit more of what we consider a mainstream thing, or at least initially started to become a mainstream thing that was accessible to folks. So I'm certainly, not a digital native, but that definitely changes a lot when I think about, like, I don't feel that old, but then when you look at how long it's been since, say, 1994, and just how many folks have been born and grown up and are adults now that have been born after that, there's definitely this divide between folks who had one foot before being connected again just by the internet, not by mobile devices or by social networks or any of this sort of stuff, and those who that's just the way it's always been for them, and because of that, their expectations have followed as such as to what they expect from the world and the technology around them and engaging with people and businesses.
But that kind of brings the question, I mean, like in 1994, let's say 0.001% of the world was connected to the internet. 1998, which is when I started, I was a late starter compared to you. Let's say 0.02%. And now it's 100% or 100% of the world, but 100. Basically, if you're doing business in one of the more developed countries, you're going to be doing business, and you have to deal with online.
You have to. Previously, businesses set the tone for engagement, and that's not the case. It hasn't been the case for a long time, and continues to not be the case. For the foreseeable future, there were a few sort of times where the new eclipsed the old, where, for instance, more mobile devices were connected to the internet than there were people who had hardwired devices. So people who were using mobile devices eclipsed people using things like desktop devices, and it was never ever going to go back. So there was an expectation that had to be set within your business of, well, we need to make sure our website is mobile. So that was an early, some years past expectation that brands would have to have mobilely accessible websites to connect with connected customers. And if they didn't, their information would be less accessible just at a baseline.
But I mean, I'm coming back to this idea. I mean, like at the beginning of the noughties, kind of, you're thinking, well, the connected customer, it's a chunk, but it's not the biggest chunk. We don't really need to worry about it. And today we really have to worry about it. I was in Mauritius for 13 years. And what was interesting about Mauritius is that there weren't landline telephones in all the towns. So everybody had a cell phone. And in fact, the connected customer in Mauritius was in some ways more connected than in developed countries like France or the UK or America, simply because nobody had or very few people had landlines. Everybody had a mobile phone. Everybody had a mobile internet connection.
Yeah, what you bring up is important to note, that connected customers are not the same in everywhere geographically and every country. So there's a lot of countries, like in the US, we tended to have a lot more individuals who were on an internet enabled, on a desktop, essentially on a computer, and over time started to add mobile devices or tablets, smartphones, that sort of thing. Whereas there's a whole nother side of the spectrum around the globe of individuals that those folks didn't spend any money initially on desktops or laptops for whatever reason. In different communities, there just wasn't money for everybody to have their own individual laptop, let alone a computer in their home. But it was easy for somebody, and just as everybody usually feels when they've got their mobile device like that, there you got that personal thing. It's just like your toothbrush. You're not going to let somebody use your toothbrush. You got your own phone. It's your personal thing. You're not going to let anybody touch it's just as personal. There are countries around the world where most of the people there have mobile devices, but don't have any other computing device or connected device whatsoever. And then there's countries where there's a lot of multi-device people that are sort of going between devices all the time. That's why, for instance, Google Analytics has made dramatic changes with their version 4 recently, which is going to take a while to roll out to people. But one of the issues has been that the pervasiveness of people who are connected on multiple devices has outpaced their ability to adapt this sort of antiquated page view analytics tool in Google Analytics that works for both, apps and websites, but doesn't really work for sort of this cross-device, single user cross-device journey that customers are doing these days.
Right. And I mean, that's always existed, but we're now phenomenally more worried about it because we're seeing it and because it's much more prevalent. And one of my questions now is, do we need to adapt to the connected customer today in a way that we didn't? I mean, even 10 years ago, the internet was there, but it wasn't as prevalent. Do we need to adapt more, or do we still need to keep doing the same things?
I think what companies say what companies believe that they're doing and what their customers say is really going on, there's a significant delta. And when we describe things like engaging on multiple devices or engaging on multiple channels, because it's not just about devices, it's also about channels. The average number of social networks that an individual is a part of continues to grow at about 1.5 to 2 networks a year. We're at an average of about 7 to 10 social networks per person.
Seriously?
Yes. And so when you think about that as a brand trying to engage with somebody, yeah.
No, sorry. We can come back to it as a brand engaging with it, but just
as a brand, yeah.
What do they do with their lives? They spend their whole time on social media. This is a question I'm actually asking myself. I can't deal with more than LinkedIn and Twitter. Beyond that, I just get lost.
I think it depends on, so there are different needs or uses for each of the networks, right? So if you think of something like Pinterest is technically a social network. Pinterest is where you go to think about what you want to do, where you're planning an event or you're planning a remodel in your house or something creative that you want to do. When you have a particular mindset, you go over to Pinterest. When you have a different mindset, you go over to, say, Clubhouse, which I was talking to you about earlier today before this.
Right.
Yeah, and then Facebook and Snapchat, Instagram, and all these different networks here. So I think that there's certainly networks that dominate the sort of mind share and attention. So that's where I think it really boils down to is what is the mindset that the individual is in. So therefore they go to that particular network or community to relax and creatively explore things in Pinterest without the pressure of trolls or negative conversation going on because of the nature of it versus say Instagram, or they want to go over to TikTok just because that's a place where TikTok, for instance, this year in 2020 has exploded. It was already quite popular, but it exploded because people were sitting at home in their, shelter in place, and TikTok was a relative place of joy and entertainment there. So that's why people went and checked it out, and we'll see how long they continue to spend their time and attention, looking at TikTok when things change in the world around them. But it's become a part of a place where they end up spending that time and attention.
Yeah, I mean, so we have users who are permanently, connected on different platforms. How do brands approach that? I mean, that's what you started to talk about. That's a phenomenally complex problem. What do I do as a brand? Where do I start?
So, I mean, it's very similar to a lot of other questions like that, which is, getting to know your customer and understanding your specific customer. What are their needs? What are where do they spend their time and attention? Because we think about it, we've got 24 hours in the day. Your customers are going to be spending some aspect of some portion of that 24 hours doing different things throughout their day. Mm-hmm. So where are they spending their time and attention? They can't be spending it, every single place on earth. They got to be spending it on a few select places. Oh,
no, I now have a question. Yeah, those select places. If my customer is spending a lot of time on Facebook, but when they're on Facebook, they're hanging out with their friends. But when they're on Pinterest, they're planning for redecorating the house, which was the example you gave. As a business, if I'm looking at house redecoration, Facebook, although they spend a lot of time there, is not necessarily my best target.
Exactly. So what I recommend is to look at it in this way, to simplify it. I call it the 3 M's.
Ooh.
So there's the mindset, the moment, and the medium. And so the mindset is what is it that they're trying to accomplish, or what is the mindset of this individual while they're on a network, or maybe even in a store with their mobile device open? What is it that they're trying to accomplish, or what is their focus or their state of emotion? Just like generally, what is that? And then even like, what's their way of learning? If you're going to put, audio content, for instance, on something that where audio content isn't as easy to consume, or your particular audience doesn't normally consume audio content, or you're writing big long blog posts, for instance, for a group that have short attention spans, don't have the time to go through all that. What's a better way that that you might package that up for them? So there's the mindset. What is their mindset wherever it is that they're spending that time and attention?
Right. Okay.
Then two, the moment. Moment is about timing. So timing is, are you providing the right interaction with that individual? Again, if you look at their mindset, you look at where they are, what it is they're trying to accomplish, is the timing right for this particular interaction that you're going to have with them? So let's take, for an example, somebody comes to your website, or say they're on Facebook and they engage with you on your chat. So it could be on your chat, like an intercom thing or a live chat on your website, but it could also be something on, like, say, Facebook Messenger. In both of those cases, chat is a mechanism for instantaneous engagement. Somebody can chat, you chat back with them. So if you aren't there and available to have a conversation back and forth with them, you may be misaligned with the expectation that particular customer has at that moment. So that timing is different.
We had that conversation. Literally, I had that conversation with David Sace and Ian Benjamin about an hour ago, and David Sace very rightly said the expectations are incredibly important. And we as brands need to understand what the expectations of the person opposite. If you offer a live chat, you have to be able to provide that.
And the expectation is important, because that's what's driving this. It isn't a thing where we say, how should we engage with our customers and leave it at that. We are being told how we should be engaging with our customers based on the expectations that customers are voicing. If you look at data by Salesforce and Edelman, a lot of these big companies, year over year, the trend has consistently been that customer experience has a tremendous impact on the bottom line for brands and businesses. It gets people to be more loyal, to spend more money, to tell more other people about said business, which obviously through word of mouth helps grow your revenue, because now you're getting at new customers by way of this word of mouth. And they're doing so when they feel that they have a great customer experience. And having a great customer experience means taking advantage of all of these technological tools we have and channels and places to engage with them in an appropriate way that makes it feel like a cohesive experience, and therefore improves the overall customer experience and getting all those benefits. And I want to make sure I get to the third M for you.
I'll interrupt, and then I'll bring you back to the third M. And one of the dangers for brands is that we find a new toy or a bell and a whistle, and we think, oh, this is going to be really cool. And that is actually not serving the customer. We're just thinking this is going to be really cool. And I like the word mollycoddle, which is English. And what does
that mean?
Well, it's cuddly. It's cuddly people. And so it's bringing people through in a way they appreciate. And mollycoddling would be something your grandmother does, which can be at a given time incredibly appropriate, and at another time incredibly embarrassing or inappropriate. So kind of that's my terribly English equivalent. So on to the third M.
Yeah, and just really quick to riff off of what you're saying, we're humans. We have different needs at different times. We have different emotions. It's just the way it is. So taking into consideration that we're dynamic individuals that have, various needs. We're not this big amalgamation of we're not all a homogenous blob, so to speak, as customers. Not
only are not all customers the same, but as an individual, I'm not the same at 9 o'clock in the morning as I am at 10 in the evening, as I am next week, as I will be in 5 years' time. But over those is it Google who talk about micro moments? I mean, it sounds
yes, Google sounds, yep.
If I may say, micro moments and serve the customer, but they're not that wrong.
No, they're not. And so we talked about mindset, we talked about moment, and then we talk about medium. And what medium is essentially what channel, device, or format is the interaction. Which channel, device, or format is the interaction in? Okay, so are you, again, we talked about the difference between like going onto Facebook where you're just kind of perusing around and looking at whatever happens to be shared there, and the difference between that and, say, again, something like Pinterest or something like a TikTok, or again, LinkedIn, which has a dramatic, is different on the other side of the spectrum from a lot of the other social networks. So when you're in those different and you've probably seen it, Jason, where you go to LinkedIn and there's folks that share things that the rest of the community sort of calls out and goes, "This isn't Facebook. Why is this here?" And maybe a little bit too personal for some folks, or whatever the case may be. And there really are no rules, but the community has assumed rules about that particular channel because that's the mindset that folks are in on that channel. From a device perspective, again, if you have a website, it could be the best website in the world as far as information goes and communicating your brand and so on and so forth. But if it isn't actually ready for mobile viewers, and the experience is subpar for mobile viewers, then you haven't thought through the fact that your audience actually happens to show up on that particular device very often. I mean, we even have other devices, right? We've talked a lot about tablet and mobile and desktop, but we've got all kinds of other internet connected devices, IoT devices, like our smartwatches and our voice assistants, our Echoes, and things like that in our homes. And there's potential opportunities to engage with customers there. And then in regards to format again really is like, is this in audio, video, text, images, a mixture of all those? Is it in VR? Like VR sounds really, really, really cool. And I've got a couple VR headsets and I love it, but it is not a great way right now for people to engage with their customers outside of a few small use cases. It may be when it starts to become more mainstream and there starts to be more, again, attention that suddenly shifts in the same way folks shifted to TikTok in 2020. There may be a time where folks start to shift over towards something Apple's got going on, for instance, or a place where if you know that they're spending an hour a day inside this particular medium, how would you engage with them? How would you create content to make sure that you were capitalizing in a way or connecting with those customers during that time?
And we're looking at a connected customer who is evolving. Two things strike me, one of which is the connected customer is not in the same mindset at any given moment of the day or of the week, but also that the tendencies are changing. We've got all these different platforms. We act differently on different platforms. Then we've got VR coming in. How can brands possibly keep up with it? I mean, once again, we look at Google. We want to jump on the new bandwagon all the time. Is it a good idea? A brand's going to have to keep up or die, or is it completely adaptive?
You always should be experimenting, in my opinion, but that experiment should be earmarked as an experiment, meaning that if you're going to do that, right, your budget, your resources, and everything that you're doing, you're testing the waters, not making an assumption that in doing so you're going to somehow beat everybody to the punch. You might beat everybody to the punch, but don't blow your entire budget on doing something like that, right?
I think you've just stated what I was trying to state in a much more practical manner. It's that we're always tempted, or a lot of us are tempted, to try and get in ahead of everybody else, but then maybe it's too early. And I like the idea of saying, actually, part of my activity is testing the waters and seeing what's going to happen.
Yeah, if I were to take, for instance, just thinking about that mindset moment in Medium a little bit, and looking at what data sets you might have available to you, and maybe it may be first party data, maybe your own data that you have available through, you know, a history of your customers, and what companies are they from, what's the makeup of those companies, where are your sweet spots within there, who are the titles of the individuals within your company, the companies that that you have had as customers. Just looking at all that data, along with any other data you have available, even looking at sort of larger big data sources that are out there, third-party data sources, looking at your CRM, your marketing automation tools, your audience intelligence stuff that there might be out there. You and I were talking just briefly about, for instance, SparkToro by Rand Fishkin and team, and you know, using something like that where you can even upload your own customer lists to SparkToro and take a look at, you can upload your own customer list, and you can see, so what are the hashtags that they're using, where are the websites that they are frequenting the most, which you know, social networks, podcasts. You're just trying to get as much data as you possibly can to just take a look at it and analyze. You look at that mindset moment in Medium, and you can start to kind of map out interactions. Again, if you just look at it at a very, very high level, you can start to map out moments where these you know that there are interactions. You map them out in a way where, if you understand, for instance, the mindset somebody may be in when they come to a page on your website, and you have a chat come up. So there's the moment, the mindset. There's the moment that chatbot pops up, and that somebody's that said in there. So what's the mindset and the moment as they coalesce, and then what's the medium, being a chatbot, and that should give you even just a slight understanding of, okay, so based on this, what is the content we should have here? What kind of interaction should we have? What is the need that this individual is going to have if they're right here? They may want to talk to a sales rep right here, or at a bare minimum, get quick access to certain content that they may have to go searching on our website to find. So how do we make sure we rise that up to the top and put that in front of them at the right moment, and even test that against other pieces of content to see if we got it right when we try to match the mindset, moment, and medium together to create the right moment for interacting with our customer.
Right, yeah, and getting it wrong on the mindset absolutely ruins the whole deal. I mean, the number of times that I've gone onto sites, somebody's popped up a chat bot, or they've done something else, and I just think, I'm never talking to them ever again. How do you deal with that? I mean, I tend to be quite feisty in the sense that it goes from, yeah, this is great, to absolutely never again, just like that. Any possibility there?
Yeah, so it reminds me of just yesterday or the day before, going on a website and looking for some information, and it was actually somebody's blog. It happened to be another marketing agency, right? I own a marketing agency. It happened to be another marketing agency that had a blog, and I was reading their blog post, and it was something slid in from the left, and then something popped in from the one side, and then they have this little thing on the bottom that said, Joe Blow from Illinois just got a lot of value from X, Y, and Z. And I don't even know what it was trying to sell. And it just felt like things were popping up all over the place. And I'm just like, choose an interaction. There's a lot going on here, and you're making an assumption one of these will nab me. I wouldn't be obviously the best customer in this case for them, being an agency owner already, but it certainly reduced the quality of that customer experience for me. Each of those things being layered on top, those different elements of calls to action and messaging and all this, all at the same time. It's one thing to test them. It's another thing to test them all at the same time, and to have them all layered on top of each other.
And that's the feeling I sometimes get. I get phenomenally annoyed with all the pop-ups and slide-ins, and as you say, now you mention it, you kind of think, yeah, they're just testing it all in one go, and all they're doing is annoying me.
And if you test it all in one go, now you're not actually technically testing each of them independently. They influence each other. They influence the results you get. If you have three things popping up at once and you haven't thought about how they create a cumulative moment, and that cumulative moment either is going to have diminishing returns after a while, or it could end up being really incredible if you use it in the right way. But in most cases, folks aren't thinking about how those things, are layered on top and create that collective experience.
I mean, that wasn't the topic for today, but I'm suddenly terribly intrigued. There are two questions that occurred to me. Number one is, most of us aren't very good at doing two things at once. So if you give me one extra thing on top of what I'm actually reading, I'm already pretty distracted. And the other is simply, I'm actually trying to do something here, and you're trying to sell me something when I'm trying to do something.
Yes.
Is that appropriate?
I think it's appropriate in certain instances because it does work, again, when you have the right offer or call to action there, right? If you understand clearly what the problem is or the job is that they're trying to solve, then you can match it with the right moment to be able to sell to somebody. Obviously, I think you're probably very similar to me and a lot of folks that are listening, is if I'm looking for something to solve a problem and the problem is being sold to me in the way of a product or service, I'm totally open for checking out that product or service. It being sold to isn't necessarily the issue. It's whether or not it's the right thing at the right time, and it's interfering with the rest of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish at that moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose kind of some of it is that I've come to the site to read a blog post or an answer or whatever it is, or watch a video that solves the problem that I have in the immediate future. And then they throw something at me for a problem that they think I might have, or they want to sell me something. And you're saying, actually, I didn't come to the site to be sold to. I came to just for this one solution. And just the fact that I've seen your brand name, is that not enough?
Yeah, and it reminds me, so there's two parts to that. So one is that customers that we work with, one of the things that one of the challenges that they face is that they have hungry sales teams. Right. And when they have hungry sales teams, their sales teams are just like, give me warm bodies so that I can start engaging with them and start having conversations. Just identify how I can get in touch with them, and I will go after them and have a conversation with them. Right. And I understand, right? There's how they get paid, there's what their job is, all those sorts of things. But in a lot of cases, that an interaction somebody has on your website, for instance, where they suddenly make themselves known, you have their information, you have their contact information, you know that they're the right fit, they have a potential need or a budget, they work with their company profile is similar to what you would like to go after. They haven't raised their hand in every case to say, please contact me, I want to be sold to. Right. There are certain paying attention to how far along they are with their customer journey, and when they are showing some digital body language around late stage engagement, meaning much closer to making a decision or buying, is different.
Digital body language, I like that. We're going to quote you on that. It's a brilliant turn of phrase.
And so there's certainly that on the one side. On the flip side, when we think about early sort of customer journey sort of scenarios, it's been batted around, but the data has been for many years, it's something close to 75% and up of a customer's journey, meaning that they are going out and they're trying to find solutions, they're trying to educate themselves, they're trying to see what options there are and all that, add it to a short list to decide how much deeper they want to go in engaging with any particular brand or going down the road of a particular solution. 70% or greater happens before you even know that person is interested in your service or product. So what that means is we've worked with customers, and I've seen it happen a lot, where individual companies are just sort of like, we just want the quickest to revenue. We just want to do some advertising and get people who are already ready to buy to come in right now and to talk to our sales folks. And the problem with that is one, they're now waiting for folks to make it through that 70% plus part of their customer journey, and then ultimately trigger some interaction with them that makes it apparent that they want to talk to a salesperson. So that's one thing. And then two is that then they eventually are always saying, well, what about the early stage, like top of funnel stuff? How do I get more people interested in what I'm doing? Well, you're not doing anything early stage. You're not doing anything top of funnel to make sure that your brand is known, to make sure that your content is discovered and found for things that, for content that would be mapped to earlier stage queries around, content and questions and things like that. You're not in conversations on social networks where topics that are early stage are being, again, discussed and sort of mulled about between other folks in your community and your peers. And so you are continuously relying on later stage paid mediums to get people who have made it all the way down the journey towards the end of that, which is a much smaller group than had you not cast a net per se, but created a digital presence that made sure that while your audience was trying to find solutions and educate themselves and research things, you were a part of that conversation in some way, or help them in some way.
But doesn't that then mean that as we become more connected, this is the last little chunk of this interview or this conversation, as we become more connected as customers, we become harder to fool, and it's harder for a company or a brand to slip in at the very last moment and steal that sale without ever having been involved in the process to that 70% of deciding I actually want to buy?
100%. It all boils down to trust. And these days, trust has been something that consumers are calling out more often than they ever have. Right. And trust has a lot to do with who the brands are as human beings, and what do they stand by, and are they transparent, and do they voice their values and then express their values. But additionally, it has to do with the way that brands utilize technology. So connected customers expect brands to leverage new technology to make their customer experience better, both in the way of engaging with them, but also in the overall customer experience that they provide when they've actually purchased a product or service with them. And along with that, not only goes a brand's ability to leverage that technology and everything to build trust, it also is related to data. That's why we have things like GDPR and we have, California has their own version of that. And I believe that in due time, we will definitely have much more severe privacy, data privacy rules in the entire US. We're already seeing companies like Apple sort of pull back on things like advertising data and data that they're sharing with others to be the bastions of privacy. But if a company is not transparent about how they leverage data, or is been found to misuse that data in some form or fashion, they are far more likely they could have an awesome product or service, but that will negatively impact their relationship with their customers in a big way. Right. And customers will go elsewhere simply because of that.
And as a bigger picture in terms of marketing, that privacy issue and the fact that we're moving towards a world where there will be less information about people in a private sense means you really have to get involved from the beginning, from the top of the funnel. And our future as brands is to say, I need to engage with my customer right through that journey, which is a really lovely way to conclude this. And it was delightful to see somebody on my podcast getting as excited as I do on their podcast. Thank you very much, Adam. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Adam.
I appreciate it, Jason. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brilliant stuff. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please do join us next week for Mike Blumenthal, how to review attributes work in local SEO. I think that's going to be great. He's really smart. He knows absolutely boatloads about local SEO, and I'm sure he's going to teach me more than I thought I ever wanted to know. Thank you, Adam. See you very soon. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.